If you've been married for 40 years and still don't know exactly where or how to touch your wife, you're not alone. In fact, many men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s are getting it wrong, not because they don't care, not because they don't try, but because no one ever taught them what a woman's body truly needs, especially as both of you grow older. I'm Shi Heng, a martial arts master and teacher with over 2 decades of experience helping men understand sexual health, intimacy, and aging. I've worked with thousands of couples, many who thought their best years were behind them until they learned what I'm about to share with you today. Now here's the part that might surprise you. According to brand new research, the places you've been taught to focus on, like the clitoris, might not even be at the top of the list anymore. More importantly, there are areas most women wish you'd avoid altogether, not out of dislike, but because those spots can be too sensitive, painful, or simply don't feel good anymore. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly 3 places women over 50 want to be touched, and 3 they don't. More importantly, I'll show you how to use this knowledge to bring back trust, connection, and even excitement in the bedroom, no matter how long it's been. So, stay with me because later on, I'll reveal the most misunderstood zone of all, the one that most men think is a turn-on, but that women secretly dread. You don't want to miss that. Before we dive in, if this topic matters to you and you want more honest, research-backed advice on intimacy, aging, and connection, go ahead and subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a future episode. If you find this helpful, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your feedback helps me make these videos better for you. Alright, let's get into what you came here for. Based on the most recent research involving hundreds of women, especially those in midlife and beyond, we now have a clearer picture of where women actually want to be touched. Not just physically, but in a way that feels safe, welcomed, and deeply connecting. So, here are the top 3 places women prefer to be touched, and why these areas matter more than you might think, especially as we grow older together. 1. The entrance of the vagina. This may come as a surprise to many men, but for countless women, especially as they age, the entrance of the vagina is one of the most emotionally and physically responsive places on their body. It's not about deep penetration or intensity. It's about presence, patience, and gentle contact in a place that carries both vulnerability and trust. Over the years, I've spoken with many women who shared that this specific area, when approached with care, made them feel seen, safe, and desired in a way that no other touch could. It's the threshold, both literally and symbolically, where connection begins. For women in their 60s or 70s whose bodies have changed, who may have experienced childbirth, menopause, or medical procedures, this area holds powerful emotional memory. When touched too quickly or too forcefully, it can feel invasive, but when approached with warmth, slowness, and attention, it can awaken a deeply intimate response. Think of it less as a gateway to something else and more as a place worthy of attention on its own. Light circling, soft pressure with the palm or fingers, paired with eye contact or a loving word, can make this moment meaningful, not mechanical. Many men assume that passion lives in the fast and urgent, but what women often crave, especially in later years, is the kind of intimacy that says, "I'm here with you, I'm not in a rush." It's not about technique, it's about intention. Touch here, when done with patience, can feel like an invitation rather than an expectation. That changes everything. What's even more surprising, the next area women prefer being touched is one that most men barely even think about, yet it holds an incredible amount of sensation. Let me show you where and why it might just change the way you understand your partner forever. 2. The area around the urethral opening. This next one is almost always overlooked, not out of neglect, but because most people simply don't realize how significant it can be. The area surrounding the urethral opening, Just above the vaginal entrance and below the clitoris is a small, delicate zone that holds more sensitivity than many men imagine. It's not often talked about, even in medical settings, yet so many women describe it as a source of subtle but powerful sensation. I remember a student, a woman in her late 60s, telling me with a quiet smile, "It's not the place I would have thought to mention, but when my husband touches me there, softly, patiently, it feels like electricity, not fireworks, but a gentle current that stays with me." That struck me, and it's something I've heard many times since. This area responds best to a feather-like touch. It's not about pressure or friction. In fact, less is more here. Using the tips of your fingers or even just a warm hand resting gently near the area can be deeply intimate. The skin is thin, the nerves are close, and for many women, stimulation here blends the pleasure of physical sensation with a sense of being carefully noticed. Especially for older couples, where the body may be more sensitive or where dryness is an issue, this kind of slow, attentive exploration can make all the difference. It's a way of saying, I'm not just here for what's obvious, I'm here for you, all of you. Often, it's these overlooked places that help women feel most cherished. But we're not done yet. There's one more place, hidden just a little deeper, that carries an emotional weight far beyond what you might expect. It's not only a source of pleasure for many women, it's also where trust lives. Let's go there next. 3. Inner vaginal wall, upper front, aka G-spot area. This final area isn't always easy to find, but when approached with care, it can create a type of connection that feels both physical and deeply emotional. The inner vaginal wall, specifically the upper front part, often referred to as the G-spot, is not just about sensation. For many women, especially in long-term relationships, it's about trust. It's about being touched in a way that feels intentional, attentive, and safe. I remember a couple in their 70s who came to see me, wondering if they'd lost the spark for good. When we talked through their physical intimacy, the wife admitted she never liked deep or fast movement. What she longed for, she said, was the kind of slow, steady pressure on that inner wall, the kind that made her feel understood. It's not fireworks, she told me. It's a warm wave that starts small and fills the whole room. That inner front wall, just an inch or two inside and angled upward toward the belly, responds best to gentle, rhythmic pressure, not thrusting. It's not about chasing sensation, but about creating a feeling of emotional presence. For older couples, where physical limits or medical concerns might come into play, this kind of intimacy can feel even more meaningful. It says, "I know your body now, and I am still learning it with love." Men often ask me, how do I know if I found it? My answer is simple. You'll know by how she breathes, how her body softens, how she draws closer rather than pulling away. It's in the silence, not the sound. But now we shift the focus because just as there are places that welcome touch, there are others that quietly, sometimes painfully, do not. Knowing the difference, knowing where not to go, may be the very thing that earns you her deepest trust. Let's talk about those next. Now that we've explored where women want to be touched, the places that invite closeness, comfort, and connection, it's just as important to understand the other side of the story. The truth is, no matter how long you've been together, there are areas on a woman's body that can trigger discomfort, tension, or even emotional pain when touched the wrong way or without invitation. Often, these aren't the places men expect. In fact, some of them are areas many assume are always welcome, but the reality, especially as women age and their bodies change, is much more complex. So let's take a look at the 3 places women most often don't want to be touched, and why avoiding them might actually bring you closer than ever before. 1. The anus. This is one of the most misunderstood and often misjudged areas when it comes to intimacy. While some media or modern conversations might suggest it's just another erogenous zone, the reality for many women, especially those over 50, is very different. In fact, according to recent research, the anus was the #1 area women reported not wanting to be touched, and their reasons weren't just physical, they were emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. Over the years, I've spoken with countless women who've shared that any unexpected or uninvited touch around this area brought not curiosity, but anxiety. For some, it triggered feelings of discomfort or shame, especially if they weren't given the space to talk about it first. For others, especially those who've experienced trauma or medical complications later in life, this area became one of protection, not pleasure. One woman in her late 60s told me, "It's not that I don't love my husband. I just wish he'd ask or notice my body pulling away instead of assuming I'm okay with it." That kind of honesty is what so many women wish they could express without fear of hurting their partner's pride. The key here is simple but powerful: respect. If you're ever unsure, ask gently, without pressure, and if the answer is no, honor that without question. True intimacy isn't about pushing limits, it's about honoring boundaries. Here's the deeper truth. When a woman feels completely safe from unwanted touch, she's far more likely to open up in ways you never expected. That kind of trust builds everything else. But there's another spot, even more surprising, that made the list, one most men would never guess, and yet many women quietly dread. It's a part of the body we often associate with depth and connection, but for some, it's exactly where things start to shut down. Let's go there next. 2. The cervix. This one often catches men completely off guard. The cervix is frequently misunderstood, sometimes even romanticized, as a place of deep, intense pleasure. But for many women, especially those over 50, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, in the same study we've been referencing, the cervix was one of the most frequently mentioned areas women wished their partners would avoid during intimacy. Here's what many people don't realize. The cervix isn't a deeper means better zone. It's a sensitive, protective area at the very end of the vaginal canal, and when touched too aggressively or even just unexpectedly, it can feel uncomfortable, even painful. For women who've gone through menopause, had children, or experienced gynecological issues, that sensitivity can increase significantly. I remember one woman in her early 70s telling me that every time her husband tried to reach as far as possible, she braced herself, not out of fear, but from anticipation of discomfort. She didn't know how to explain, she didn't want to hurt his confidence, but she was silently wishing he knew it didn't feel good. This is where listening becomes more important than performance. Slower movements, shallower depth, and checking in, even with a simple, "Does this feel okay?" can make all the difference. For many women, what they need isn't more intensity, but more attentiveness. If you're a man in your 60s or 70s, trying to rekindle intimacy, learning where not to go can be just as powerful as knowing where to touch. When you respect those boundaries, something else opens up: emotional safety, trust, and true connection. Now, the next place might really surprise you. It's a spot most men have touched without thinking twice, but for some women, it's become too much. Let's talk about it, because understanding why could change how you approach touch forever. 3. The nipples. This one might come as a surprise. For years, we've been told that the nipples are one of the most erotic zones on a woman's body, and for many women, they absolutely can be. But what most people don't talk about, especially when it comes to women over 50 or 60, is how often this area becomes more uncomfortable than pleasurable. Hormonal changes, especially after menopause, can dramatically increase sensitivity in the breast tissue. What once felt arousing can now feel overwhelming, even painful, when touched without care or warning. Yet, so many men reach for this area automatically, assuming it's always a green light. I remember a woman in her late 60s telling me during a quiet moment in my training hall, "I love that my husband still desires me, but sometimes when he goes straight for my chest, I just wish he would slow down and ask first. It makes me feel like a person again, not just a body." That honesty stayed with me because often it's not about avoiding the area altogether, it's about how you approach it. The nipples are incredibly sensitive, and that sensitivity can shift dramatically with age, medication, or emotional state. Some days, a light touch might feel wonderful. Other days, it might feel like too much. The difference isn't always predictable, which is why the key here is presence, noticing her breath, her body language, or simply asking in a soft voice, "Is this okay tonight?" When you take that kind of care, you're not just touching her body, you're telling her you're paying attention, that you're still curious, still learning her, even after all these years. That kind of intention builds a different kind of intimacy, one that lasts. If you're wondering how all this fits into the bigger picture, what it means for you as a man who still wants to feel close, needed, and connected, stay with me, because what I'm about to share next might just reframe how you see yourself in this next chapter of life. A reminder for men who still want connection. If you're still here, listening closely, that tells me something important about you. It tells me you care, not just about physical touch, but about connection, about closeness, about showing up for your partner in a way that still matters, even after all these years. If no one has said this to you in a while, let me be the one to say it now. That matters. You matter. The desire to stay connected, to keep learning, to love more gently and more deeply with age, that's something to be proud of. So many men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s come to me wondering if they've missed their chance. Maybe their bodies have changed. Maybe intimacy has felt distant for a long time. Maybe they're afraid that what used to work no longer does, and they don't know how to start again. But here's what I tell them, and what I want to tell you now. It's never too late to reconnect, not just with your partner, but with the part of yourself that still wants to give, to care, to explore. Connection at this stage of life looks different. It's not about performance, it's about presence. It's about making your partner feel safe, seen, and valued, not just for her body, but for her whole self. When you lead with that intention, something beautiful happens. She starts to let her guard down, walls soften, trust returns, and from that place, real intimacy can begin again. So, don't give up. Don't assume it's behind you. Sometimes the most meaningful chapters in love come not at the beginning, but in the quiet, steady years later on. When I first came across Shi Heng's insights on intimacy and connection, I was struck by how deeply they resonated, not just in the context of romantic relationships, but in the broader scope of human connection. His words, grounded in years of teaching and understanding the human spirit, offered a fresh perspective on what it means to truly connect with another person. The idea that intimacy evolves with age, requiring patience, presence, and a willingness to listen, felt like a wake-up call. It's not about chasing fleeting moments of passion, but about cultivating a deeper, more meaningful bond that honors the other person's needs and boundaries. This realization shifted how I view relationships and taught me lessons that extend far beyond the bedroom into everyday interactions with loved ones, friends, and even myself. One of the most profound takeaways was the emphasis on presence over performance. Shi Heng's focus on the entrance of the vagina, the area around the urethral opening, and the inner vaginal wall as places that evoke emotional and physical connection highlighted a universal truth. It's not the act itself, but the intention behind it that matters. In my own life, I've often fallen into the trap of thinking that doing more or being more impressive would strengthen my relationships. But the lesson here is clear. Slowing down, being fully present, and paying attention to the subtle cues of those around me can create a far deeper impact. Whether it's listening to a friend's concerns without rushing to offer solutions or taking a moment to truly see my partner's emotions, this approach fosters trust and understanding. Applying this to daily life, I've started practicing mindfulness in my interactions. For example, when talking with my partner or family, I make a conscious effort to put away distractions like my phone and focus entirely on the conversation. It's amazing how much more connected I feel when I'm not just hearing words but noticing tone, body language, and unspoken emotions. This mirrors Shi Heng's advice about gentle, attentive touch. It's about showing up fully, without an agenda, and letting the other person feel seen. I've found that this small shift has made my relationships richer, whether it's a quiet moment with my spouse or a heartfelt chat with a colleague. Another lesson that struck me was the importance of respecting boundaries. Shi Heng's discussion of areas to avoid, like the anus, cervix, and nipples for some women, underscored that true intimacy requires honoring what feels safe and comfortable for the other person. This principle applies to all relationships. In my friendships, I've sometimes assumed that what worked in the past still applies, like teasing someone about a sensitive topic or pushing for closeness when they needed space. Learning to ask, "Is this okay?" or to notice when someone pulls back has been transformative. It's about creating a safe space where others feel respected, not pressured. In practice, I now check in more often, whether it's asking a friend if they're comfortable discussing a topic or ensuring my partner feels at ease with physical affection. This builds trust in ways I hadn't anticipated. The idea that intimacy changes with age also resonated deeply. Shi Heng's reminder that connection in later years is less about urgency and more about rediscovery challenged me to rethink how I approach personal growth. I used to view aging as a decline, a loss of vitality or opportunity. But his perspective, that this stage of life invites us to create something new, has inspired me to embrace change rather than resist it. In my daily life, I've started to see transitions, like career shifts or evolving family dynamics, as opportunities to learn and grow closer to those around me. For instance, I recently reconnected with an old friend by having an honest conversation about how our lives have changed, rather than trying to recreate the past. It felt like a new beginning, not a nostalgic rerun. Perhaps the most powerful lesson was that intimacy begins with attention, not action. Shi Heng's stories of couples rediscovering connection through patience and understanding reminded me that love, in all its forms, thrives on curiosity and care. I've applied this by being more intentional in small moments, complimenting my partner's efforts, noticing a coworker's stress, or even taking time to reflect on my own needs. This shift has made me feel more connected to myself, which in turn makes me a better partner, friend, and colleague. It's a reminder that intimacy isn't just physical, it's about touching someone's heart through presence and empathy. These lessons have reshaped how I navigate relationships and personal growth. By prioritizing presence, respecting boundaries, embracing change, and leading with attention, I've found that connection becomes more meaningful, even in the simplest moments. Whether it's a quiet evening with my partner or a conversation with a stranger, these principles remind me that true intimacy is about showing up fully, with an open heart and a willingness to learn. If this reflection resonates with you, I'd love for you to join the conversation. Like this video to show your support, share it with someone who might find it valuable, and subscribe to the channel for more insights on living with intention and connection. Drop a comment below, Let me know what you took away from this or how you're applying these lessons in your own life. Your thoughts help us grow and keep this community thriving. Let's keep learning together.